Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Big Brace and welcome to this video tutorial where we're going to build a body mass index calculator using just HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We're not going to work with any frameworks in this tutorial. Just straight logical JavaScript coding plus HTML markup and the CSS styling. BMI stands for body mass index. And according to Wikipedia, body mass index is a value that's derived from the weight and height of a person. So BMI is defined as the body mass, which is divided by the square of the body height and is expressed in units of kilogram per meter. So a BMI is an index that shows the type of the body that you have currently. So under 25 kilograms per meter, you are normal or normal type of body. From 25 to 29 kilograms per meter, you are overweight, and equal to or more than 30 kilograms per meter, you are obese. Let me just show you below here the categories. So the BMI calculation results in a number. This number can vary from 0 to above 40. Nothing from 0 to 15, very severely underweight. From 15 to 16, severely underweight. 16 to 18.5, underweight. 18.5 to 25, normal or healthy weight. Then above 25, we start to have the overweight. So we have overweight from 25 to 30, then obese class 1, class 2, and class 3. Okay, so these are the different layers. And these numbers basically are used by the World Health Organization. So this is an interesting fact here. The World Health Organization regards a BMI of a less than 18.5 as underweight and may indicate malnutrition, an eating disorder, or other health problems. While a BMI equal to or greater than 25 is considered overweight and above 30 is considered obese. Okay. So yeah, this is basically it. Now the calculation of the BMI itself is our concern here in this video tutorial. So we're going to build this application using, as I said, HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So this is the main application. We have just a background image that you can get from Pixabay or pexels.com, and you will have a lot of image stock here. Then you can grab and put in the background. All right. So first of all, if you will not enter height or weight and we'll click on calculate directly, we will have this spinning wheel and we'll have an error message, enter height and weight first. Okay, for 5 seconds, then it will disappear. Also, we have the clear button. So we have calculate and clear button. So let's say the height is 180 centimeters. The weight is 75 kilograms. Click on calculate or hit calculate and you will get your BMI in numbers. Your BMI is 23, and if we'll go to our Wikipedia table for the categories, 23, so we have from 18.5 to 25 is normal or healthy weight, okay, which is exactly I showed here. So we have an output and we have a state. So if you will have just a number, the calculation 23, you will need to go to Wikipedia or to any source to understand what's the significance of that number. What does that number mean actually? But what I did here is I added some explanation with a little icon just to show you that you have a healthy weight, normal, with a little icon of salad. Let's decrease that number. Let's make it 45 kilograms, for example. Now we have a different message. So your BMI is 14, very severely underweight with 1 loaf of bread. Let's make it 55, for instance. Now we are underweight with 3 loaves of bread. All right, let's increase it. So let's have 95 kilograms. All right, so now we are overweight with a BMI of 29. Okay, and so on and so forth. So first off, we're going to write our markup in the HTML file. Then we're going to add some styling using CSS. And last but not least, we will work on the logic using JavaScript. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so now I'm inside my Visual Studio Code and let's go ahead and create index.html, styles.css, and script.javascript or JS. All right, so as we said, we're going to start by the markup first, then styling, and finally we're going to finish with this JavaScript file. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can hit Shift exclamation mark tab to have a simple boilerplate for the HTML file. The title, let's type BMI calculator. All right. Let's also have here above our styles.css. Okay, and above the body, let's have our JavaScript. Alright, so the first thing that we want is a div with a class of wrapper. So again, if we're using VSCode, you can type div.wrapper and hit tab to have this handy emmet abbreviation. Okay, and similarly with the ID, you can have div, but instead of dot, the hash, and you can type wrapper or the name of your ID, tab, and you will have div with an ID of wrapper. Okay, but we don't need that. We need just a class of wrapper. All right, let's make this a bit organized, and let's have an h3 with an ID of info. And inside here we'll say enter height in centimeters and weight in kilograms. Okay, now I'm using a plugin called Live Server. You can install it, and this simply will allow you to see the changes on your browser the moment you save what you do. So you can go ahead and search that Live Server. Okay, and you can see here that it has almost 5 stars. It was downloaded 10 million times. Okay, so let me show you that. Let's close this first. If you right click here, you can open with Live Server. All right, so this is what we have. Enter height centimeters and weight kilograms. Okay, perfect. So let's move on. Let's have a paragraph, and this paragraph will have a class of input, and inside we'll have height. Okay, and we will need an input. So we'll need an input field with a type of number, because we'll need to enter number basically, right? And I want a property called onFocus. And what onFocus does, you see here in the end result, you see the input field. When you will click on the input field, the width of the input field changes. Okay, this is onFocus, and we'll change it in the CSS. Okay, but I will need that property here in the input field first. Okay, so let's get back. So onFocus is equal to this dot value equal to empty strings and with an ID of height. Okay, let me just make this a little smaller like that. Okay, and I want the same thing for the weight. And I want also the loader spinner, this loader wheel. And by the way, the loader image doesn't have to do anything with the calculation. When you will enter the height and the weight and you will click on calculate, the calculation itself takes just a fraction of a second, doesn't take all of that. This is just a part of UI experience to give you, or to give the user the illusion that there is a calculation happening behind the scenes. I set it in JavaScript file. I set the set time out for 2 seconds. So you see this loader will continue to display it for 2 seconds, then it will disappear. You can include it, you can take it out, but I personally think it's a good user experience. So here we will have the loader image. Okay, so here is the body, loader image. We'll have a div with a class of loader. And just for the moment, this will be an image, of course. And okay, let's just put it and grab it. All right. Source is loader.gif. When you will save, it will display like that. But for the moment, we will comment this line out and we'll activate it later. We also want to have our output. the BMI calculation, what will appear after we will hit click. So this is a paragraph with an ID of output, and we want the same thing for the state. The state is the explanation. Okay, so we have the output and we have the state. Okay, and both will be plugged inside the DOM dynamically based on the calculation. And we want also two buttons, so create two buttons, calculate and clear. Okay, so we will have a button with an ID of btn. Just let's add also class of calculate. All right, so you can add ID and class in the same manner. Here we'll type calculate. Okay, and also need the same thing. Instead of calculate, we want clear. All right, and also let's give it a couple of breaking lines. And the last thing, we need a footer, but it's not obligatory. You can ignore that if you want. Footer with a class of footer. So inside here I will have the copy mark, designed by, and a tag, HTTPS. You can add your own website if you want. So backbrace.com, and here we will say backbrace. You're free to type your own name with your own website. Okay, and when you will click that, you will be the user will be directed to your website. Mine for the moment is still under construction. So that's basically it. That's all. That's everything that we'll need to do in our HTML file. Now let's give it some colors and styling, and let's type some CSS code. So let's close that. Let's open styles.css. And I didn't want to use any frameworks, any CSS frameworks, Bootstrap, Foundation, Skeleton, any of that. Well, CSS is beautiful, so why not writing it? So let's give it general settings for the body. So give it the margin of 0, heading 0. Also let's give it font family. What's it called? This Arial sans serif. Yeah, Helvetica sans serif. Text align, let's put it in the center. Okay, good. Also the min height 100 ph. The background image, well, let me just grab it real quick. Okay, so it's a URL and it's called pic.jpg. All right. Okay, I hope it's clear for you guys. No repeat, center cover. All right, good. And user select will make it none. All right, so these are the general settings for the body. Now we want the wrapper class, which is the main class that's wrapping the whole application. So wrapper, width of 500 pixels, position absolute, top 50% and left 50%. Okay, and now it will be in the middle when I will make transform, translate -50% and -50%, and now it should be in the middle. The background color, I have an RGB red, green, blue colors for 105, 194 and 197, but you're free to change everything if you want. Opacity, I'll give it some opacity of 80%. You can make it 70% if you want, or let's get it back to 80%. Okay, border radius 50%, not 50%, sorry, 1 rem, which is roughly translates to 16 pixels. Also padding of 50 pixels and 20 pixels, 50 top and bottom, 20 to the right and left. Yeah, so this is it. Also, let's give it some box shadow, and we'll give it 20 pixels and 50 pixels, then 20, and black color. All right. Now let's go to H2 font. So give it font size of 30 pixels and font weight 600. Now we want the input class. So we have here the input class, the height and weight dot input, and the text align. Let's put it to the left side. Text. Let's give it margin to the left 120 pixels to push it a little bit. Okay, good. Let's also change the color, just white, or you can make it triple F. It's basically the same thing. We'll make it a little bolder, so font weight, make it bolder. Alright, now we want the weight and height IDs. So we have here height and weight for the input fields. We will need to work, if you remember when I told you about the on focus, we will need to work on those two input fields now. So height and weight. Okay, the color, I'll give it this hexadecimal color 222F3E. Text align, we want to the left. We want the font size to be equal to 20, give it 20 pixels. Font weight 200. Outline, give it none. Okay, outline is the outside frame. We don't want that, it looks ugly. So the background we want to be none, just background none. Border bottom, so border bottom and border right, we'll give them white color. Okay, so border bottom 1 pixel solid, D1, D6, D8. Okay, and the same thing for the border right. Okay, so you see here the border right and border bottom have this this color, this white color. And finally we'll give it a width of 200 pixels. Okay, so nothing yet happens when you'll click inside the input fields. Now we need to work on that, on the on focus property. So this is the weight and height input fields before the focus, and the width has 200 pixels, and we'll need to make the weight and height input fields for 300 pixels after the focus. Okay, so this is what we'll need to do. Focus, and the same thing for the height. So border bottom 2 pixels solid, and this same hexadecimal color, this whitish color. Okay, and width will increase it by 100 pixels, so from 200 to 300. Okay, so you see now when you will click, it changes from 200 pixels to 300 pixels. And let's make it more elegant by give it some transition of 0. seconds. All right, now let's work on the output, okay, which is dynamically generated. So we'll have a color of this crimson color with this hexadecimal number, with a font weight bolder, font size 19 pixels, and that's it. Also, let's work on the buttons. Both buttons have an ID of btn, so let's give it a margin top of 10 pixels. Let's give it a border of none. Okay. Let's also give it an outline of none. You see, just to show you the outline, when you will click here, you see that ugly frame. This is the outline. We don't want that. Okay. So now when you will click, you don't see it. Also, let's give it cursor pointer. Okay. Let's give it a white color and a background color, which is RGB of 49, 92 and 93. Okay, good. Let's make it a bit bigger, width of 150 pixels. Give it some padding of 10 pixels. Let's also give it border radius of 10 pixels. Okay, good. And box shadow of 2 pixels, 5 pixels, 2 pixels, and black. So you see when you click, nothing happens. So we'll need to work on that to change the color of the button and the color of the font itself when we will click. Just to give it some elegant design, nothing more. So we will need to work on the button when it's active, when it's clicked, right? So let's give it a background of red, green, blue, 226, 238, 238. That whitish color. And also let's give it some box shadowing, so box shadow. Now just before we type the box shadow, if you will click now, you see that it's changing to white. So maybe better just to be more organized to change also the color to be black. Now when you will click, you'll see that the background is white and the font is black. Also let's give it some box shadow, 0.5 pixels and black. And finally we want transform to translate on the y-axis for 4 pixels. We can make it bigger. We can make it, for example, 10. See, it's moving below. Translate y. If you will translate to the x, it will move to the right. Okay, just messing around with the code just to show you the different patterns. Alright, perfect. Now let's go ahead to index.html quickly and go to the loader. If I will uncomment this line and I will save, the image will continue displaying until the end of days. But we don't want that. We want to set the display property to none. So we will hook up the loader class to styles.css and we'll set the display to none. Okay, now we'll save and it will disappear. Alright, perfect. Now we're done with the markup and with the styling. The last thing we need to do is to work on the logic on the JavaScript side. So let's go ahead and type some JavaScript code. In our JavaScript file, the main thing that I want to do is to write 2 functions. One function to calculate the BMI and another function to clear everything out, the input, the output and everything. Later, we will create event listeners to respond on click. So functions, BMI calculation plus clear. And I will try to add comments as much as I can. So the first function is BMI. So here is calculate function. And inside the function, I want 2 variables, one for height and one for weight. Okay. So I will use the keyword const to declare height variable. This will be equal to document.getElementById. We have getElementById and query selector. So get element by ID to hook up any element that we want in the HTML file by the ID name. And inside we have height, okay, and we want the value of that. So we want the value of height and the value of weight. And it's basically the same line for weight, so we'll change that. And here is the main calculation. So this is the formula, right? Here, height and weight variables. This is BMI formula. Let index, and I use the word let, the keyword let, to declare the index variable instead of const, because let can be updated while const cannot be updated. Equal to weight. And this is the main formula that we have seen in Wikipedia. Height divided by 100 multiplied by height divided by 100. And all of that is converted to fixed. This is for the fixed point notation, just to ignore any decimal points. Next, I want to have a condition. So condition to check if height and weight are not equal to 0. So we'll say if height and weight are not equal to 0, in this case I want to have my calculation. I want to return the index variable. I want to get the value of that index variable, which is the main calculation, right? So I will have two variables, output and state. So again, const output is equal to document dot get element by ID, and we have an ID of output. The same thing for the state. And let's just console log the result for now. So console log, let's say your BMI is, and we'll concatenate that with index. Okay. Else, let's have an alert for an error. So alert error. All right. So let's add our event listeners. So we'll have document dot query selector, and here if you will take a look to index.html for the buttons, we'll have here this class calculate. Good thing that we have checked that. Calculate. Okay, so we'll need to hook up these classes to script.js. So document.query selector, and don't forget to add the dot for the class. Calculate dot add event listener. Okay, so we want to listen on click event. So the moment you will click on the calculate button, we will trigger that function. We will invoke that function. So the function is BMI, but not in quotes, it's outside. Okay, so two arguments. One is the event itself, the second is the function. Okay, so let's save that, and let's go here and open our DevTools. Make sure that you are in the console tab. Okay, so let's go ahead and type 150, 50 for example, and when we will click on calculate, we will get your BMI is 22. All right, good. Now we are sure that the formula is working okay and everything is just, we don't have any bugs. Okay, let's develop the code a little bit. Let's go ahead before we move on in the calculate function. Let's write the second function, clear function, which is very easy actually. So function clear document dot get element by ID, and we want the height ID dot value. We'll set it to empty string. We'll need 3 of that, so 1 for height, 1 for weight, 1 for output, and 1 for state. Okay, and let's go ahead and add also event listener for that. So event listeners for button click. Calculate event listener. Document.query selector. Class of clear. Don't forget the dot. Add event listener. Also on click, we want to invoke the function clear. I think I changed it with a capital C, yes? Okay, good. So the same basic idea. On click, we trigger the function. So let's try that out. 150. Let's have 50 kilograms. Calculate. Okay, good. Your BMI is 22. Clear. And it clears everything out. Let's have other number. Calculate. Your BMI is 39. Clear. Uncut type property cannot set property value of null. That's alright. Now, instead of console log, we are going to say output dot inner HTML is equal to your BMI is and concatenated with the index. Let's try that out. 150, 50, calculate, and boom, your BMI is 22. Clear, and everything is cleared. The other thing is the state. So we will need also to add a state. So we will check if index is less than 15, we want the state dot inner HTML to be equal to very severely underweight. So let's try that out. Let's say, for instance, 180, 20 kilograms. Very severely underweight. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and change this color. We'll add a span with a style of color set to yellow. Oops, what did I do? Okay, and let's add that loaf of bread. So in case that the index is less than 15, we want to add this or to display this message very severely underweight. What about the others? So just for time's sake, I will copy them and I will paste them below. Okay. So in case of the index is less than 15, then it's very severely underweight. Less than 16, severely underweight. Less than 18.5, underweight, and so on. All right, so let's try it. 150, 50, calculate. Okay, good. 80. All right, fine. Clear. Okay, it doesn't clear the output or the state. Let's check out why. Output. Oh, I know why. Because output and state don't have value. They have inner HTML. So the output and the state, they have inner HTML and not values. So we'll need to change that. Inner HTML. Let's save that and let's try again. 180, 95, calculate, okay, clear, and perfect. So now we want to work on the loader. We want to hide it initially and we want to show it only after we hit calculate for 2 seconds, then we want it to disappear again. So to do that, we will use setTimeout method. So let's go to add event listener of click and let's delete click from here. Let's add an anonymous function and we want two things basically. So initially we want to hide output, so document.getElementById, and we want the output style.display set to none. Then we want to show the loader, so document.getElementById loader is set to block. Okay. Then we want our setTimeout method. So setTimeout, it takes two arguments, the handler and the timeout. So the handler in our case is our function, the BMI, and the timeout is the number of seconds. So 2000 milliseconds, which means 2 seconds. All right, just before we try that out, loader, I think it's a class, not ID. Loader, yeah, it's a class. Okay, so be careful for the IDs and classes. So loader is query selector, and don't forget to add the dot. Okay, good. So now if you will try 150, for example, 58, calculate. Okay, good. So it's displaying overweight. It's 2000. Yes, it's 2 seconds, but we will need to reverse this at the bottom here before the else. And let's have document.get element by ID. The output has an ID, so that's okay. Style display set to block. So here hide output and loader, and also we want the loader. So let's copy that. Query selector dot loader, and here we'll set it to none, to be hidden after 2 seconds. Okay. All right, so let's give that another go. 180, 58, calculate. Okay, 2 seconds, and perfect. 2 seconds disappeared and displayed the output and the state. Fantastic. Clear, and clear is working as well. All right, perfect. The last thing that is remaining in our application is the error, because let's click on calculate. We'll have an alert. We don't want the alert anymore. This was just for testing. And also you will see that the spinner, the loader, is still working. So let's work on that part instead of the alert. So here is the error message, and I will leave you guys also this alert, and also for the console log. So before with the console log, your BMI is, and we concatenate it with the index. Okay, because I will leave the code in the GitHub repository. You can download it, or if you're coding along, that's fine. Let's have another function. So we'll have function called error, and inside that function we will have different elements. So we'll have the output, the loader. So the output, we want to set it to block, we want to hide the output, and we want to hide the loader, because you saw that it was still spinning. So document.get element by ID. So let's actually copy both. It's the same code. And then we want to show the message in the output. So document.get element by ID, output dot inner HTML, and we'll give it a color. But before that, let's type the message itself. So error. Let me copy this icon, and also we want to give it some color. So span with a style here, color set to AC1C09. Now the most important thing in this function is to have the set timeout method. Okay, so we will set the message to be displayed here for 5 seconds, then we want it to disappear. If we will not do that, the error message will be displayed till the end of days. So we want to set it only for 5 seconds or 5000 milliseconds. Let's just invoke the error function right away, and take a look what will happen now. Before we will type the set timeout method, calculate. All right, enter height and weight first, and it will only be like that. It will not disappear. So in order to change that, we want to have our set timeout method. So set timeout method. All right, so this is the main idea. So set timeout, let's make it ES6. That's okay. The timeout, we want to set it for 5 seconds. Document dot get element by ID, and we want the output dot inner HTML equal to empty string, and similarly for the state, but the state has a query selector. I don't know why I did that. You can do both with ID. So query selector state, and that's it. Perfect. So for 5 seconds, it should disappear. Let's try that out one more time. Calculate. Okay. Should disappear after 5 seconds. And bam. So let's give that a final test. So let's have 175 centimeters. Let's have 85 kilograms. Click calculate. Your BMI is 28. You are overweight. All right, which is very bad. You will need to work out more and eat more salad. All right, clear. Okay, perfect. Let's have 180 and 45 kilograms. That's very bad, very severely underweight. You will need to eat more, and perhaps you will need also to work out. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this project, guys, and if you would like to see more and more of these applications using just straight HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'm always open to any suggestions, and your feedback is most appreciated. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you in the next videos. Take it easy.